It is. Today, we're gonna do hour number 1. We have our man CJ here. He's a good fella, and not in the mafia kind. But he's a good fella that's gonna help us learn the mechanics, the intricacies, and the fun times of the stun game.
Right.
Right. So, right now in the discussion, it is myself, Evan, aka B-Bombs, aka Prime Directive. I have AKAs, but I don't have as many AKAs as aka CJ himself, aka Requiem, aka Corposant, aka whatever he's feeling like today. Johnny, aka NerdUnemployed, is also in the room, and we're having some fun times. CJ, not CJ, CJ.
CJ.
You came off of a really fun and impressive second place at Cali Crush. It was a really fun match watching you and Steady. And you guys, it seems like, have a little bit different approach to the stun game. Can you first tell me, in like, if I'm a 5-year-old, what like a good basic definition of the stun game is? And then you could talk a little bit about perhaps the differences between you and Steady's stun game, and then we'll get into kind of like mechanics and strategies and things of that sort. CJ's in the middle of fighting Commander Panda, my most favorite rival right now.
I'm just trying to imagine talking to a 5-year-old. This is intimidating already.
Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, I just don't have the skill level to talk as a 31-year-old.
Fair enough. So, obviously, the stun game includes all interactions where you hit the opponent and they start to basically hold their hands to their head, or something somewhat similar. And at that point, you can obviously either press your offense all the way, finish a combo, or you can use it as some kind of reset, depending on what you do like. And there's a lot of options within that. Obviously, that get a lot more complicated. So that's the 5-year-old version of that.
So,
my 5-year-old be confused. That's okay.
So the stun game, like, you hit people, it causes stun, and depending on the context and circumstances of the hit, it can cause, and the specific hit itself, you know, which move you're doing, it can cause more or less stun. So my understanding of the stun game is the way in which you use that, you know, the knowledge of that and the different mechanics and way, the different types of stuns to, you know, gain advantage on the opponent, use it for mix-ups, put them in a situation of, you know, in your combos and whatnot.
Right. Obviously, you're just trying to use it to deplete the health bar, and frankly, the stun game can be used in some way or other. Like, so long as it gets to that end, it doesn't really matter how you use it, and people have been, you know, people use it very flexibly, so you're not seeing one method that's recommended to stun. No, there's no real endpoint to it, even though the critical burst system kind of suggests an endpoint, there isn't really a one that's necessary.
So let's talk about that then, right?
Sure.
So critical burst is something that is very important to the DOA stun game. A critical burst is when, basically, as you play, or as you hit somebody and they stay in stun, you're basically filling up in an invisible meter, right? Which is their critical stun meter. And once it gets to kind of like, I'm gonna say critical mass, but that may even be, you know, once it fills up entirely, that's when you're at level 3. Say it again?
You only need to go halfway.
So halfway is when you get to critical level 1, right?
No, you're getting critical level 2 by that point, and like not at the end of 2, but somewhere in the middle of 2, actually, you can do a critical burst. So you don't really need 3.
Well,
So
the point of
I want some clarification there then. What's the point
Okay.
of the levels? Like, level 1 critical stun is what?
Okay, so each level is simply a launch height thing. And so if I launch you at level 1, it's the shortest height. If I launch you at level 2, it's a longer, except if I critical burst, because that skips all the way past 3.
Got it.
And then 3 and critical burst are actually the same in terms of height.
Okay, and that would involve any move that you do to a stunned opponent that would launch them in the air, and that's also affected by that character's weight.
Yeah, any move that would be defined as a launcher. It should be noted that when I do mean a launcher, I don't mean any move that would knock down. It does mean they have to go up into the air.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you don't also mean power
because
launchers,
if I do any
those are
two
different.
moves, like at any point in the special, if I just did like get them in stun, which they will never do.
Right.
Yeah, I will never get them in stun.
So anything that'll send them airborne.
Yes.
Okay.
Is affected by the critical level. See, if I do
Got
like this, doesn't matter what level I'm at, she's not going to fly me there.
Yeah.
Right,
Like,
yeah,
elbow,
obviously.
elbow. Right.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a bound. I didn't know Lisa had a bound. Anyway. Okay, so then here's another thing, right? This is important because when you're playing the stun game, and so critical stun, like you said, one of the main things to remember is that critical stun level 1, 2, 3 are more corresponding to height of launch than they are directly to being able to pull a critical burst. And like you said, midway through critical stun 2 is when you could technically get off a critical burst. And that's primarily because most critical bursts have like long startups. You know, they're like 20 frame plus moves for the most part. But the thing to take note of is if you have somebody in critical stun 3, like all your moves are really powerful in that sense as far as knockback and a launch height on a on a launch or whatever. And so if you get too far down the critical stun meter and you hit them, they can just fall over and it blows your whole combo up. You know, it's like in other games you get a lot of damage scaling and stuff like that. And this game really works on it with that critical stun meter, where once you get close to the max, you know, your hit's just gonna knock them far and away from you, so you can't continue the combo. So that's when people decide to do these things like get a critical burst, which puts them in an unholdable long stun state. So you basically get a free launcher of any kind or a free power blow if you have that available to you. Or that's when people start doing mix-ups to try to reset the stun gauge, essentially. You know, they'll try to get someone to hold so they could start another combo or do a throw or whatever like that. Because if the other person is expecting a critical burst and you have them at full critical stun, they could do something that could set them up for just like another complete combo for a reset or something. So, CJ, your stun game, what are your thoughts kind of going into trying to manipulate stun and seeing how that goes?
It's interesting. I try and use it flexibly. I say try because I think, frankly, I've fallen off. I used to use it more flexibly, and I've kind of not been recently. And so I've been kind of going into level 3 directly and doing some kind of blocks, the expected stuff. I think, generally speaking, that from my perspective, that the best people who play the stun game use it to contest every point in the interaction, right? So they don't. Every point in that stun could be a reset at any moment. It could be a continuation. It could be a separate throw. It should be all of those things. It never should be something where you can expect someone to be doing something in particular.
Yeah.
And the best players keep their options flexible continuously. As I've said, that's more ideal than fact right now, but there you go.
And that's kind of how it works sometimes. It's I don't know, maybe ideal is just always like you're always chasing an ideal, and that's just kind of the thing. But you got to understand you have to understand the concept of the ideal generally to be able to work your way toward that. And if you know what the end goal is, then you can start incorporating smaller steps along the way.
Right.
One of the things with the stun game that I'm personally extremely terrible with is knowing kind of intuitively what moves will put people in what point in stun. Because it's really tough, because like certain moves, like you would never think that when you're already in stun, a jab would do so much, but it does. Like a standing punch leaves them like crazy negative, and you get some amazing stun, at least with Lisa, right? If I already have you in stun and I just tap P one time, like I could follow up with almost any move after it, because I get, you know, like 23 frames of stun or whatever it is. But that's one of the few things I actually know, and it ends up becoming super predictable because I know I can do that. And really early, whoa, that was tricky. Really early on, people can pick that out for me. I mean, I remember specifically playing you and playing Steady at some point during the weekend, and you guys would just be like, oh, he likes going for these jabs, you know, mid-combo. Because to me, that's the only way I could think of to connect moves, but that's just obviously my lack of experience with things. What's your, if you have any pointers on kind of early ways to get started in trying to develop your stun game beyond just hitting buttons and doing moves, or doing, let's say doing scripted combos, right? Because I think you have scripted combos, and there's something to learn about that. As far as, and you know, and you would say, I think you use this as flowcharting, right? Where you basically have, you know that if you open up with X, then you're going to follow up with Y and Z. You know, if you open up with A, you're going to follow it with B and C. And that's sometimes really good, but if you stay within those patterns, you can get read really easily. And some people gotta, you know, you want to move to be able to freestyle it a little bit more, or at least be able to play the mind games where you're like, hey, I'm going to set you up for A, B, C and make you think I'm going to do that. But as soon as I do that A, B, and you're holding for C, I'm actually going to hit you with like D, E, or F. So kind of, well, like, let's talk about transitioning from flow-charting scripted combos to being able to have a little bit more of a free-flow stun game. Like, what do you think actually can be a useful way to get started in that direction?
So the thing that I honestly did, wow, that was good. I mean, everyone does this differently. I'm not gonna make a claim on what the best way is or what works for everyone, how they reach that point of flexibility. Clearly, I think I've lost to some degree, so. But when I was first learning it, I guess what I did is I just learned as many scripted combos as I could, right? So, like, I would look at good players playing my character today, at first at least, when I didn't really know anything. I would just look at their whatever kind of sets they do, and I would just go to the lab and like practice like that exact combination, right? And then I would look at another and do that, and look at another and do that, and eventually, through the practice of simply building so many and trying to keep doing all of them individually, not to like just be able to switch between the two I had, I would force myself to go to the next one at least. Over time, it became I could choose between options on the fly or individually. But I really just started doing different flowcharts because if you don't really, I think I mentioned this last time too, you don't really have the parts for it, you're not just going to be able to kind of force spontaneity. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you kind of have
this kind of goes back.
First. Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the whole concept of learning fundamentals before being, you know, learn the rules before you can break the rules, right? So you might, whether through game experience or through, you know, training mode or whatever, learn combos that work, right? Learn combos that only have a couple opportunities to allow for holds. Learn combos that kind of flow easily into each other and can get you good damage. And so, like, if you know 2 combos, your goal is to learn 3 and then 4 and then 5 that you can pull off pretty effortlessly in a match. And so, you know, like maybe you have 2 now and then you want to add a 3rd one. So your goal during, you know, your match, whether it's online or offline or ranked or whatever, is at some point you're going to say, okay, force yourself to get that 3rd combo. Force yourself to get that 3rd combo until you can pull that out on the fly, right? And I know one of the things for me that helps, at least initially, is using different openers to try to initiate different combos, right? But, like if there's a progression path, it's like, say, combo 1 starts with PPK or whatever, right? Combo 2 starts with back turn 4 HK, whatever, right? Doesn't matter what it is, right? You know, combo 1 starts with this move, combo 2 starts with a different move, combo 3 starts with a different move entirely. And so that's a good way to get you used to being able to do different combos. But then the next step is being able to do different combos that start with the same move as well. So that you know you have options for when you need to do mix-ups and stuff like that. And so I would say, ooh, me and Commander Panda do not have the best of...
Nonsense.
Not at all. Hey, I could get away with all kinds of stuff online I couldn't get away with. When he... Oh no! That was terrible. Sorry, this is so distracting. He's gonna blow this combo. Yeah, that's what you get. But, yeah, so the whole point... the whole point is, you do this thing where you're like, you work your progression up. First you have, you know, one type of combo, then you have different combos with the same opening, and then you start saying like, okay, you know, maybe you need to go for damage, maybe you need to go for a setup. And if that's the case, like, that's when you start thinking, this combo's better for this situation, and maybe depending on your opening, or like, independent of your opening, the middle of your combo can be used for a specific aim, you know, depending on if you know if it works or whatnot. Right. Which is kind of a... It's so funny, because part of it goes back to what we were saying in the car on the ride back, I think, or somewhere over the weekend. How basically, there's a lot of thought that to be good in these games, you know, at this kind of level of competitiveness, that there's just people who are kind of born with it, right? That they naturally have the gift or whatever, and that's kind of like, that's actually not the case. There are a ton of people who put in a lot of time and effort, and that's one of the things that on the one hand is intimidating as a newer player, as a player trying to come up, but on the other hand is actually really encouraging, that kind of anybody can learn to be really good at this game. And I think that's one of the things people, like, we all have the game, we all have it at home on consoles, so that it's like, it's not like you have to go to the arcade and spend a ton of money every time you want to play, which is a big benefit versus, you know, 20 years ago when we'd all have to go and line our quarters up. You get one match, you get stomped, and then you have to, you know, like, wait 20 minutes to play again. But yeah, I think it's important for people to know that, like, you can, like, chill at home, and you could be totally casual. You don't have to be laser focused. But you can, you know, just put in the practice time and just play around with things and try new stuff, and then just intently taking note of what actually works for you and what doesn't. And then there you go. Yeah, so Shin Maruku in the chat has a really good point, right? Some people have the gift, but effort crushes the gift. This is actually the story of Jerry Rice, to be honest. You know, the best receiver in all of the NFL. And really, partly of Kobe Bryant. Like, everybody will give these guys credit for being naturally gifted, but, like, Jerry Rice was not the fastest guy on the field. He was never the biggest guy on the field, anything like that. But he worked harder than anybody else. He worked longer than anybody else. He just refused to let anyone be better than him. And as a result, you know, he's the best receiver in NFL history. So I'm not saying you have to be Jerry Rice. I mean, if you want to be Jerry Rice status, if you want to be the best player in DOA history or in any fighting game, you have to do that. But the fact is, like, to be at high-end levels, you just have to work hard. And you can do it. Anybody can do that. So it's within reach. Yeah. Back to the stun game.
Yeah. You just have to know you're getting in. You just have to know you're putting a lot of time. That is the thing. And most of the time, I think people, when I talk to them, they'll kind of they'll kind of ask me, like, oh, why haven't I gotten good at this game? Why haven't I gotten good at this game yet? Or something like that. And I'll kind of ask them what their play habits are, and 80 to 90% of the time, it's simply they've not been playing. Not even close.
Yeah.
They're not even, and they're kind of playing maybe even, I don't want to say the wrong people, but they're not really pushing the envelope of the experience, right? Like, oh, I play only on Wednesdays with something, or oh, I only play with my best friend offline. You know what I mean? Like, that will help you get a little better, but you're not gonna take the moon with that. You've got to play sink long hours playing everybody in every venue as much as you possibly can, and so you've got to know what your goal is, what you want out of it, and you've got to actually do all that you can within those boundaries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about launching out of stun, because there's a degree to which, like, I don't know, there's weird things because there are different goals out of stun, right? Like, you can have a full ground combo that, I think there's actually an Emperor Cow video. I'm not sure if it's Emperor Cow. It might be in his original DOA 5 kind of like breakdown series where he talked about combos, and he always talks about like an opener, and then like mid-level continuing stuff, and then going into that third part. And that third part is different, right? The third part could be a launcher. The third part can be a critical burst, which can then go to a launcher or power blow or whatever. Or it could just be finishing it with like a big move. And this is always the thing, right? There's always a beginning, middle, and an end. So what?
Well, that depends.
No?
I mean,
no, exactly.
I mean, like sometimes you can just kind of truncate, right? I mean, so you can kind of terminate really early. I'm playing. Let's say I get a new hit style, or just some random I might simply decide to immediately launch. Don't even bother with any kind of arc, and simply go for a setup on the ground in order to set up a chance of me getting something that will get better percentage damage in the future, right? Saying, this isn't worth it. Let's set up an advantage situation and try and get something better, right?
Yeah.
You can do that a lot. I mean, some characters specialize in almost like avoiding that, or I don't want to say specialize. They have certain ability in particular to get really reasonable damage just avoiding all that in the first place, and just immediately launching. Like, it doesn't matter that much for them in the same way. And so with them too, the arc can be pretty different. You never know. A lot of the players that I see play can kind of do all of it, but some players like to do one or the other, or
So that's interesting because it's kind of like there are different. I mean, yeah, there are different goals out of the stun game in general, and it doesn't have to be that kind of typical path. Like, I would say the beginning, middle, end path is your basic path. Like, if you were going to start, you're going to try to find an opener, you're going to try to find something that could connect you to a launch, or connect you to a burst, or connect you to, like, a pushback move, or something like that, right? To get your damage. But, like you said, there's, like, in the actual process of the game, and especially in high-level competitive stuff, people can have completely different goals, completely different views, etc. I'm actually going to take a quick second to invite Hodge into the chat while we're over here on this, while we're on this, what's it called? This little in-between match type stuff. And boom! Didn't even miss the match. I like it. I mean, he'll get in when he can get in. But so as a beginner, I would say when you're trying to get into the stun game, when you're trying to first like intentionally utilize stun, what's the first thing, right? Because to me, I would say pay attention to your openers, right? I would say pay attention to what type of, when you get things on hit and on counter hit, which matters, right? If you get something on neutral hit versus counter hit, it's different. But pay attention to what type of advantage or disadvantage your hits create just in the different situations, you know? And it could be intuitive, or it can be like in the lab, right? You could go to training mode and literally just have your dummies sit there without blocking and just tap your different buttons and see, like, do you come out really positive in frames? Do you come out negative in frames? Is it close, etc.? You could do that, or you could do it kind of intuitively and play the computer or play a friend or play online and just try things. Like, okay, I'm going to try to open up with punch. You know, and punch can always connect. Maybe because it's a natural combo, or maybe because it's something that just doesn't leave the opponent enough time to really react. But when you do things intuitively like that, it's kind of interesting because you're making it a feeling it out process. Some things that are the escapes that are rare, especially if you're not playing high-level players, you might not notice for a while, right? You might think punch-kick always connects with your character until you play somebody who's really good that knows how to get out of punch-kick, and maybe by the time the kick comes, you know, they're doing a low hit or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Another thing, of course, you'd want to note, like, just generically, is what the hit level of the moves you're using are. I mean, if you're always using mid-punches and extend your stun, even as a beginner, probably not the best idea. People, especially mid-punches, because everyone holds mid-punch, just generically. So you kind of just want to be aware when you're in the lab building those things, like, you know, one of those questions is, hey, are all the combos I'm making essentially connected all by mid-punches, right? And if so, maybe I should go and find one that isn't connected all by mid-punches, and so on and so forth. Because that stuff will get you killed pretty quickly, as opposed to some of these things that's going to go farther out in the learning process.
That's a good point.
So, I have a question then. How is it that I should be discovering, you know, while I'm being stunned, when I'm able to or unable to do things like holds?
Ooh, from a defensive perspective?
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
I've experienced that a few times where it's, you know, like, there are strings that obviously the stun is so, you know, a part of my inability to mount a decent defense. And I think another part of that question is, you know, what is the overall defense against the stun game?
So obviously, I mean, there are two, like, very, like, I guess you could say, if you had anything, there are, like, two very broad, like, takes in the strategy. One is stagger escaping, the other is holding, right? Clearly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, you know, I mean, like, you could also just, stagger escaping is also kind of combined with just not holding at the same time, really.
Right. So, I'm sorry, really quickly, stagger escaping, because it's something I don't do and need to do, is when you're in stun, you kind of just back and forth on your forward and back on your movement stick.
Yeah, I
to
hold
break
guard
free of the stun.
Yeah,
right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, hold guard. So that you're not randomly walking into the next strike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that. How's my connection stuff? Anyway. So I mean, like, the thing about it is, obviously you want to, and connected also to staggers. Oh, welcome.
What's up, Hajan?
Why are we so laggy right now? I don't know.
I have no clue. It's tough for everybody. Good. We're good on this end, so. But anyway, stun game.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well,
stun game.
Anyway, back to the presentation. So obviously, I don't know. So. Okay, let's sing it like...
Whoever has the audio in the background, please be careful with that.
So, essentially, if you know someone's going to be throwing you a lot, you don't want to be putting out holes. Like, you can kind of... If you watch it very generally, you get an idea that way. But, there are, like, honestly, holding out of stun has a lot of weird rules to it. And trying to sum up quickly is sort of painful. Like, low holding is a thing where it's as if it's never. I don't want to say it's never a good idea or never a bad idea. It's never that simple. So you have to just be very like acutely aware of the interactions. That way, just kind of see. You know, an A/B test is always what I think. See if it works. If it doesn't, go back.
Okay. Okay.
Just be careful of like if your holder are clearly being punished, and usually they're punished by throws, but sometimes by kind of things that might not be as obvious. For example, if you try and hold low and somebody does, I know, it's just gonna be like that.
I know.
It's just gonna be like that.
Yeah.
Wow. See, that was a mid-pick hold. And so you I'll back that up this.
Yeah.
So, this is brutal.
It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean we're gonna like we got like 15 more minutes on this topic, and then in the in between everybody can reset and do what we gotta do.
Yeah.
Who's watching
Yeah,
the stream?
that echo's gotta die. Okay, cool. So Johnny, you and I will talk about stun game.
Yeah.
So here's this fun thing. Here's this fun thing about the stun
I don't
game.
stagger escape, and I need to do that.
Yeah, me too. And that's actually something that kills me a lot when I play other people because one of the things that when Hajin was down here for SCR, he talked to me about. We were doing different scenarios, kind of like a training status, and he would show me like, okay, you know, well if you do this move into this move, you know you have certain level of advantage, or you could press blah blah blah, and then for him it was just default to say like even if they do a full stagger escape, which I just never take into account, and it kills me because then if I go into tournaments and somebody's doing stagger escaping, then it kills. So for anyone else who doesn't know, stagger escaping is the process of while you're holding block of moving the stick or the D-pad. I think originally it had to be in a 360 motion, but now you can do back and forth.
Back and forth. Yeah, and it's incredibly prevalent, obviously, for us too, and you guys even mentioned it at the tournament at Cali Crush. I believe it's Roger has a really intense stagger escape.
His stagger escape's so out of control.
You can hear it on his stick.
You can hear it everywhere.
It makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, it's just something I do, and I think that for me, a lot of it turns into this thing where it's like I kind of give away a lot of free damage because I don't do that.
Yeah. And it makes it tough, and it's like it's one of these things that.
It is.
Okay. Now, would understanding that be the difference between like stagger escaping at level 2 and not level 1 of stun?
I think a good example on that is like learning how to stagger escape in situations where you basically like it's the only thing that's gonna work, right? That's a good place to start. And then because like for example, if you get into certain people are going to use like sit down stuns on you that are not exactly guaranteed, you'll want to learn how to get out of stuff like that. Like you'll see Jan players do. This is a very difficult one. There's no way. You have to get in the habit. Like Jan player 6H plus K, right? Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So that thing, it's a particularly difficult example, but Jan players will like go from 6H plus K into critical burst all the time. It's that sit down stun he does, and then it's like they'll like it's a jumping kick into critical burst, basically.
But I'm sorry, really quick, just to explain. The sit-down stun. Sorry, the sit-down stun is not the hard knockdown, but it's like the one where the person kind of gets knocked back on their ass and can get out. Right.
Yeah, and like they're still active for combos.
Animation.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, my understanding, I got to be clear, because actually, this is something I just don't actually know. When you get different stuns, right? There's sit down stun, there's crumple stun, there's limbo stun, there's all these different types of things, right?
Oh god.
So it's weird because they all have different properties. Now, for something like sit down, like that actually avoids highs, right? Like you can't follow up with a high on that. Okay.
Right.
So it's really interesting. Hold up, Johnny, real quick.
Go ahead.
It's really interesting because you have situations where, like, if they're in sit-down stun, obviously, like, they're squatting down, they're sitting on the ground, so they dodge the highs. But if you get, like, a bound, which is when they basically go head over heels, and now they're, you know, sliding back with their feet in the air, and their, you know, shoulders or the back of their head sliding on the ground, you could run up and use a high to hit their feet, which are in the air, and it immediately resets them to a standing position, and you can continue your combo. And it's one of those things. Okay, it's treated as an air state.
Oh, an air state. Okay.
Well, wait. So let's clarify this though, because it's not. It's not completely a launch state because I can't run up and do an air grab, right? Like Lisa has an air grab, I can't run up and do that. But in the sense that they're not tied to the ground, but they can be hit by ground attacks. Okay. It's a weird state. Yeah. It's a sliding back standing position that you have, like, you're completely in stun the whole time. You have no options of escape or anything until the full animation completes itself. Hmm. Johnny, you had a question or you had something before I cut you off?
No, I don't remember now. No, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the bound state thing.
Because
it kind of makes sense though. It's like, really it's about studying what your characters do, but I think that, like, from the way you guys describe it, it's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's more about being playably flexible to catch it. Like, being fast enough to know when, oh, I see that, when to make the choice, right?
Right.
Which is, you know, something that you just kind of learn as a player over time. You know what I mean? Like you said, going into a dummy room all day long is going to learn you, you know, some of the basics, some of the data, but it's not going to be used until you use it practically and start learning how it works.
Right. You know, sit-down stuns are the easy examples because they're like those clear ones where it's like, well, what else are you doing in the game, right? Because you can't, when you're in the sit-down stun, that's literally all you can do at that moment. Unless it's, we're not mentioning some weird ones, but basically, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So,
like, the one I know immediately with Tina is the AT, right?
I think so.
Where she does it's like up, down, like that.
Yeah.
It depends on the level of the strike, though, yeah.
Uncommon and above, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And what I do right after that is try to go for a low throw when I can.
Yeah, for sure.
Do that?
He said he tries. So, okay, so, you said using stagger escape. What's the most bonehead basic, like, earliest place? If there's the first place you should try to stagger escape, are we saying that that's sit-down stun?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then from there, you're experimenting with different types of stuns to know when you think you could actually...
some stuns people will... And sometimes it's just... you have to be a lot more cognizant. For example, people will connect stuns with moves that would connect if they don't... sorry. If they would connect if they didn't if you didn't stagger escape.
But if you stagger escape, they won't connect.
If you stagger escape, it would. Now, the thing about that is that people will get away with some of that abuse regardless. You don't want to try and stagger escape every technical instance of that, because that will never practically happen. You have to react. You'd be having to not react, and you kind of become obvious that way. The stagger escaping becomes very visible after a certain point, so you're gonna see that and just kind of react to that. Usually because when you're stagger escaping, you're probably not hitting buttons like strike, so you're gonna get thrown really fast, for example.
Right. Yeah.
So you want to be
Just
careful
wait for
that
it.
way. But if someone's clearly abusing a certain stun that won't connect if you stagger escape, like something really obvious in their combos, and maybe they would do it or they would throw, right? Well, then the stagger escape becomes a very safe option, right? At worst, you get thrown for neutral hit, where before you may be taking this 50-50 guess for high counter damage or success, right? Now it's kind of more in your favor. But you have to be aware of that by a case-by-case basis, and there's no hard and fast rule on what stuns people are using. That would actually be the case. That takes a lot of practice to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this game really just is practice and figuring things out, and it's cool because I like that it's a little bit of a puzzle. There are just so many variables involved, but honestly, that's just kind of how it's gonna have to be. So let's try to wrap up the stun talk and kind of say, what is, do you have Hajin and CJ? Do you guys have any kind of final thoughts on the stun game, kind of final advice for new people trying to get into the stun game, or a way to elevate your awareness offensively and defensively and able to, use it to your advantage?
Hajin first. I'll say this then. If you are a new player, I would say, and especially if you're coming from another fighting game, be patient with the stun game. It has it's a very discreet? No, it's not very good. Very specific set of rules that are all to its own. It doesn't have much of an analogy to other fighting games. It doesn't have much of an analogy to many other strategy games out there, frankly. And it's probably going to seem broken a few times. There are going to be things that seem too strong, that don't make sense, or you don't feel like you have a reasonable option for it.
Yeah.
My experience has been that things that I have thought were problems always have resolved into obvious solutions at some point. And that's been true even in the broader meta game between other good players. Things that look really powerful, certain strategies that seem kind of dominant, have fallen off more or less.
Yeah.
So be patient with it. Keep experimenting, try new things as much as you can, because it's definitely a game that rewards variety.
For sure.
Be aware of all that.
So I'm gonna go ahead and oh, go ahead. Yeah, add. So I would say the thing I want to wrap it up with is the stun game is a large and fairly complex version of the game that really takes people a long time to master. So I wouldn't, as a newer person in this game, I wouldn't be mad at yourself for doing scripted combos, or as we've called, doing flowchart combos. Because that's really your first step toward getting to the stun game. And just know that learning it and improving upon it is a major process of progression. And just try to take baby steps, when you can. And it's something that if you don't put a little bit of time in, if you don't put dedicated force time in, you might not be able to take those steps because you're just not going to see it. But definitely know that it's a progression and take these baby steps. And really, enjoy it along the way. The stun game's so much fun when you see somebody who's a master of it. Any last thoughts, anybody?
I'm good.
Johnny?
No, yeah.
Cool. Alright, well thanks everybody. That's the stun game. This was the episode of DOATEC Academy on the Burning Point Monday DOA stream. Blah blah blah. Names, follows, all that stuff. We do this every Monday. on twitch.tv/Prime Directive Multimedia. Okay, so we're gonna take like I don't know, 5-10 minutes or whatever BSing, and then we'll get into the next topic. I'll invite some more people in case you have questions, but basically Johnny and I are going to talk about community and tournaments from a tournament organizer perspective, and kind of some of the things that we think it'd be nice for everybody to know that we experience on our side in our attempts to help pump up the community, help growth, and also like just bring more fun and more incentives and things like that to the entire thing.
Yep.
Sounds good.
And break.